Hey, what's up? We have a little over 1 week to go until the 2022 NBA draft. It's hard to believe. We're almost here. The finals is still going on, but we're starting to get a little bit of clarity on where some of these guys might go. And starting at number 1 with the Orlando Magic, as I write here, all indications point to Jabari Smith Jr. being the first choice for the Magic. They have some supporters for CHET Holmgren within their front office. It seems like Banchero was a little bit less likely, at least as of today. Smith, I totally get it. He is safe in the sense that, at his size, 6'10", there's some two-way, taller Harrison Barnes type of potential here with his size, defensive versatility, shooting ability, at a minimum, giving him a foundation to have a long career in the NBA. I have the Michael Porter Jr. comparison in there for that exact reason on the offensive end. However, the one concern with Smith and why some Magic fans might be a little disappointed in him over CHET Holmgren or Paolo Banchero is the lack of shot creation. That's the one flaw in his game right now. As I note, doesn't get very low with the ball, doesn't have the tightest handle. There's tightness in his lower body on drives to the rim, and that's where I'm reminded of Porter Jr., who is a bucket getter, but isn't necessarily that guy who breaks down defenses. So with Jabari Smith Jr., I think he's a worthy number 1 pick, and that would be a fine choice for the Magic. He'd add to their defense. He'd fill some gaps. And you know what? Over the course of time, maybe that handle does develop. Number 2, I got CHET Holmgren going to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So with this selection here, this just makes way too much sense on paper considering their needs. They have their playmakers in Josh Giddey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, even Trey Mann, if you want to throw him in there as a Thunder fan. They got that. They have some versatile defenders, some hardworking tough guys, but they lack the rim protector behind them. And that's where CHET Holmgren could come in right away and make an impact as a shot blocker, a rebounder around the rim. So Holmgren, you have the concerns with the fact he's so lean for his size. There's naturally injury concerns considering the history of a big man. But for OKC at number 2, I'll tell you what, I think within their offense, the way Giddey moves the ball, the way SGA moves the ball, all of these guys are movers, whether the ball is in their hands or not. So for CHET, he would be able to unlock some of the playmaking that we didn't see at Gonzaga, but we did see at lower levels. With his shooting ability, with his spacing, with his at-rim finishing as a lob threat, and the playmaking, he's not a key playmaker, but he's one of your passers. So I really like the Oklahoma City fit. I do got to say this, though. I think Banchero makes a lot of sense for them, too. The scoring spark that he would provide would add also a nice balance to SGA and Giddey, who are more, Giddey's more of a pass-first player. SGA can do both. Banchero would give them another primary scorer that I'm into, but I'm also not against trading down if I'm Oklahoma City. Just throwing that out there. And by the way, with CHET, that's pretty good. Gen Z, Pau Gasol, Rudy Gobert with perimeter skills. That's pretty good. Sign me up for that guy. All right, moving on to the 3rd pick here, Paolo Banchero. So with Banchero at number 3, this pick seems to get mixed opinions from Rockets fans. Some Rockets fans want to have CHET Holmgren. They hope for Jabari Smith. But there's a large segment of Houston fans that I can tell get as enthusiastic as I do about the potential for a Banchero Jalen Green fit. Listen, I think Jalen Green has a chance to be a mega star. We've made videos about Green in the past in the Ringer. His athleticism, his shooting ability, his work ethic. This is he's a bright kid who works hard and already made significant improvement both in his G League season. He got way better from the beginning to the end, and as a Houston Rocket from beginning to end last year, the dude was shredding down the stretch, getting far more comfortable, better feel, playing with better pace. Now you add Banchero to that, a 6'10" dude who can handle the ball, who can shoot, who can attack off the bounce and pass. You suddenly would have a combination where you could have Green Banchero pick and rolls with Banchero pick and popping for threes, either taking it off the catch or attacking off the dribble against a rotating defense. Or if he rolls to the rim, he's so good with the ball, he can attack, get to the basket, but he can pass too. And Jalen Green is the type of shooter that's going to force defenses someday to pressure him, come up on pick and rolls. So that combination, Green Banchero could be ridiculously good. The concern would be defense. What level do those guys reach? Can Banchero bring better effort and intensity than he did at Duke? That's the question no matter where he goes. But if I'm Houston, this is one of my favorite prospect team fits. But then again, like the Holmgren's a pretty good fit there too. So, all right, moving on to the next couple of picks here. Let's lump these together to start. 4, 5, and 6. So you got Keegan Murray going to the Kings, Jaden Ivey going to the Pistons, Shaedon Sharpe going to the Pacers. This is a weird point of the draft here where it suddenly becomes unpredictable. We know that top 3 is going to happen in some order, but starting at number 4 with the Kings, we don't know what they're going to do. Jaden Ivey is the person most people have number 4 on their boards. So maybe he goes in that slot because the Kings are a trade candidate. They're looking for veterans. They want to be a team that makes the postseason next year. But if they stay, that's where Keegan Murray makes a lot of sense in that spot, which could force Ivey or Sharpe down to 5 and 6. That's something to watch for on draft night, because with Murray, if the Kings indeed do use this selection to draft the player who can help now, they'd be taking a guy who was a late bloomer, is 22 years old as an NBA rookie, but he has a game that can help. He can fit next to Sabonis with his shooting ability, his versatile perimeter defense. He can maybe play even a small 5 for you in certain lineup situations. And then on offense, this dude is a bucket. He's a shooter, very good from the perimeter, and he's the type of guy that you don't really need to hand him the rock. As I note here, a low maintenance scorer who makes timely cuts, seals underneath the basket to make himself an easy target, and relocates to get open. This dude's just smart. Keegan Murray's just a smart player. So that's why you get the Pascal Siakam, Al Horford, and TJ Warren comparisons there. Different types of guys, all 3 of them are, but you take a little bit of Siakam's size and his ball handling ability, a little bit of Horford's really like standstill, low maintenance style as a shooter behind the arc, and then TJ Warren with a little bit of the mid-range creation that he flashes. And I mean, we'll see how that manifests over the time for him. But I like Keegan Murray a lot, even if he lacks upside compared to Jaden Ivey or Shaedon Sharpe. So with the 5th pick with the Pistons, they really like Colin Sexton, the Cavaliers' restricted free agent point guard. If they get Ivey at 5, there's no reason to go for Sexton, because their priority, or one of their priorities, should be finding a partner in shot creation for Cade Cunningham. And Ivey really fits, that description with his downhill ability. This guy's dynamic. He can pull up. I think Ivey with Cunningham, the truth is, I mean, anybody can fit with Cade Cunningham. If we're being totally honest, like that's the type of player that Cade Cunningham is. Like this dude is for real in terms of his shot creation ability. He can play with or without the ball. And so with Ivey, you got this, like super exciting downhill guy who can finish at the rim and create space off the bounce from outside. Really, the only concern with him is, as I know, he didn't really run the show at Purdue. He wasn't the primary guy, but does that matter for the Pistons? No, that matters more for other teams. It doesn't make sense for the Kings considering all their guards, and even for the Pacers, I don't love the fit as much next to Tyrese Halliburton as I do next to Cade Cunningham because of the size aspect. Cade is so versatile, so big on defense. But with that said, it's not a bad fit for the Pacers at number 6 because they could also use another ball handler with Halliburton. I have Sharpe here, who is a raw, talented scorer, explosive at the rim, can create a little bit. He shows some flashes, even though he's been asked to be a score-first player. This dude's a bucket getter, period. Like, end of story. That's what you're drafting him to be. And so with TJ Warren entering free agency this year, not that you're drafting for need necessarily, you are drafting for fit in terms of how are we going to construct this roster for the next 3 to 5 years. And you're going to have some type of scorer. Sharpe would have the ability to get playing time, opportunity there, and playing next to Halliburton I think would help him a lot. However, a lot of Pacers fans rightfully like Benedict Mathurin out of Arizona at this pick. I had no arguments about Mathurin over Sharpe. I have no arguments about Mathurin even at the 5th pick, to be honest with you. I think Mathurin's really dope. But Shaedon Sharpe, one of my favorites in the draft. Paul George, tall Bradley Beal, Jalen Green comparisons. None of those are exactly perfect. And even the tall Bradley Beal one, probably got to remove the tall. Sharpe isn't that much bigger. He's about an inch taller. In this video by J. Kyle Mann, if you haven't watched that yet, you better check it out after this. Really great breakdown. Dyson Daniels, he's one of the risers in the draft. Looks like he has an improving jump shot through pre-draft workouts and the combine. 6'6", big dude. Like, this is a tall guard. He can create for you. And so for the Portland Trailblazers, they're in a position where they want to continue building around Damian Lillard, adding veterans. They very well just might trade this pick. They could trade out of the 7th spot. I reported in this same mock draft that they've had conversations with Atlanta for John Collins. My expectation is that deal would not happen without further pieces being added. However, it just is another indication of what Portland is at least having discussions to do as the draft approaches. And with Daniels, let's say they stay here with the 7th pick. Daniels, I mean, I don't like to use the Evan Turner comparison considering how much of an overpay he was for the Blazers. But think about all the good things about Evan Turner, the theoretical good things about Turner. He was a 6'6", 6'7", ball handling wing that was theoretically supposed to provide versatile defense next to Damian Lillard and help create easier shots for him. That didn't work. It didn't work out in the way the Blazers had hoped. But with Daniels, you get all of those good theoretical things and like a better, younger package because Daniels, this dude is a passer. He's a very smart ball handler, good decision maker, doesn't make many silly mistakes. He's a guard who handles the ball. He's a playmaker, but he doesn't need to touch the ball in order to make an impact because he has such great feel for cutting and moving and relocating. The only question about him really was his jump shot. I mean, his defense, he's a high level defender for his age. He's versatile. It's just, like I said, subpar shooter, slower footed shot creator. He's not very explosive, but does that matter if you're playing next to Damian Lillard or in the future, Anthony Simons? If Dame were to be traded, then you get a Daniel Simons backcourt. That's pretty exciting to me if I'm a Blazers fan to get a guy like him there. Because he can play with Dame now and then also help you build for, the future if Dame gets traded. All right, next up, we got Benedict Mathurin, who I just mentioned, have him going to the Pelicans. They're such an intriguing spot here. They don't really need anything other than Zion Williamson to stay healthy. And with Mathurin, I like this pick here because he can play with CJ McCollum. He can bring that energy. He can bring some of that toughness on defense, a little undersized with those two in a backcourt. But if you have Ingram, Herb Jones, and a 5th out there, a motivated Zion, I think you can survive that way considering you have so many guys that can bring the ball up the court themselves and initiate the offense for your team. Mathurin was more of an off-ball guy as a freshman, and he played at a really high level. He made over 40% of catch and shoot 3-pointers, came off screens a little bit. Like he can play off ball, he can cut. But then as a sophomore, he became someone who's handling the ball more often for you. So think about that in the context of playing next to Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum. Sometimes you're going to have to play without the ball. And so having those players who are selfless and willing to play that, take on that responsibility is of the utmost importance. And I think for him, he's had some amazing highs, some incredible hustle plays. I mean, we saw during the tournament how intense, how excited that dude would get on the court, the emotion he'd have on his face. But at the same time, there were some inconsistencies on defense. Maybe there's a level of accountability in this New Orleans system that Willie Green is starting to build that could help promote more consistent behavior from him on defense. Number 9 with the Spurs. I know San Antonio fans were a little surprised by this selection, but Jeng, French 6'10" guy who played in the NBA last year. This dude is rising up boards, man. Like the people I talked to around the league are starting to really say, yeah, this guy's, middle of the lottery, maybe late lottery is a bit more likely. I feel good about putting him in the top 10 for now. We'll have a better idea of his landing spot, but I don't see him dropping any further than the mid lottery for fans of other teams that are hoping for him to become, like the 17th pick at Atlanta. I just don't see that happening. We'll see what happens on draft night, but for a team like San Antonio at this selection, why, pass up on a 6'10", fluid ball handler who can create his own shot when you already have a lot of good players? I mean, if you're San Antonio, I'm trying to take a swing here in this draft, if not multiple swings, on a guy that I feel like can be our face of the franchise. And maybe Jeng's not that. But if he can become close to it, maybe you're number 2, you're number 3 with an outside chance of growing into himself, becoming a more efficient scorer. To me, that's a gamble worth taking over some of the other guys we have coming up, including AJ Griffin, who has had major injury concerns going back to high school. He missed nearly 2 years. This dude's skilled. I think he's a better ball handler than he gets credit for. I probably want to remove or change this three-point shooting Jimmy Butler comparison. I think a lot of people have misunderstood my point there. When I compare Griffin to Jimmy Butler, what I mean is just the way he moves. Like, Butler has a very unorthodox way of moving his hips, moving laterally while moving forward towards the rim. It's very funky. Griffin's the same way. He just moves slow. He doesn't have like the best handle for actually getting to the basket. He's not someone who draws a lot of fouls, but it's just the way he moves. And that if he were to continue down that path and continue enhancing his ability as a ball handler to become somebody who's drawing more fouls than he does now or getting to the basket more often than he does, well, I mean, hey, that's where the Butler comparison comes from. It's just a little funky way that he moves that reminds me of Butler. So for Washington, you'd be taking a risk here because of the injuries, but this dude, skills-wise, I mean, like, this is why we get TJ Warren again on here as another comparison. He's a bucket getter. He can score. He's a knockdown three-point shooter. I think this guy's going to have a long career provided he stays healthy, and his defense is very good too, or should become very good. All right, for our number 11, we get Jalen Duren with the Knicks. If he even falls this far in the draft, he's definitely a potential top 10 guy, but for New York, landing him at number 11 would be huge. They have Mitchell Robinson as a free agent. Julius Randle, like, say goodbye to that dude, and then Noel can't stay healthy. They could use a big. Duren is someone who fits their young timeline. I'm really into this pick for them, but they could really go in any direction if we're being honest here. Duren's athleticism would make him an immediate lob threat. I like the fit there, though I'm also into someone like Sohan. Looking ahead here, Agbaji, a little too high for him. Johnny Davis, I like him at 11 too. They could use a point guard, but for now, I'm keeping Duren at that 11 spot with the Knicks. Going to OKC at number 12 with Sohan. I mean, this dude, I love him. I think Sohan, Ben Simmons, Draymond Green, Aaron Gordon, that's because of the defensive versatility. It's the intensity. It's the fact that you can put him on guards. He's tough enough to defend some bigger guys. 6'9", long arms. This dude busts his ass. Like, I love Sohan, one of my favorite players in the draft, and he can pass too. That's, again, why Simmons, Green, and Gordon are the comparisons for him. He's a passer. He can handle. All that he can't do is shoot with any consistency. Lacks a reliable jump shot. Just 31.7% of catch and shoot threes. Just 57.5% of his free throws. Doesn't have a great look and release. I mean, that's the concern there, where, like, if you don't have a jump shot in today's NBA, we saw it in the postseason, the entire playoffs, teams are going to sag off you and say, hey, prove you can shoot. Prove it. And we're going to clog the passing lanes. We're going to clog the paint. We're going to make it hard for your offense to run their sets if you don't have a shooter on the floor. So that's a concern with Sohan. Agbaji going to the Hornets here. This is a bit of a safe pick. I have a hard time placing him in the draft, to be totally honest with you. It's tough to find where exactly a team is going to draft a 22-year-old senior, but he gets lottery hype. Charlotte is a team that they are trying to build a competitive roster around LaMelo Ball. And Agbaji is somebody who, again, like with Keegan Murray earlier, blossomed late in high school and college, and now he's somebody who is a potential lottery pick. And those types of guys can sometimes continue to get better too. So he has a baseline to be a 3-and-D type of guy, but there's potentially more in his game if he's able to tap into it. My one concern with him is this. Like, I know 46% of his threes over his first 22 games of the season, but only 31% over his past 8 leading into the conference tournament. And the half court shooting only 27% on pull-up threes and 29% on pull-up twos. So while there's flashes from him, and he shot well as a senior, there's still some data points in there that say, hey, maybe he's like not as great as he was as a senior as a shooter, and is more like he was his first 3 seasons when the numbers weren't nearly as good. But hey, I mean, like I said, this guy's got talent. He's a smart player, plays hard, good defender. I think he's somebody that could make sense in the middle of the first round. However, I think Johnny Davis is the better prospect, and I have Charlotte passing on him, which means Cleveland can land him. This is something where I could also see Charlotte saying, we're just going to take the best player available. It doesn't matter. And maybe I'll change that in my next mock draft. But for now, I want to place Agbaji here because of the LaMelo Ball factor. I think they're looking for more wings and bigs than they are for guards. And I know a lot of people say don't draft for need. No teams draft for need. That's not true. Teams do draft for need because need is sometimes how you break tiebreakers in determining your selections. And also, they know Cleveland isn't going to take the guy that I have them taking 15th, Mark Williams. So let's get to Mark Williams before we get to Johnny Davis here, because the Cleveland has so many bigs, it wouldn't make sense for the Hornets to take a big at 13. They'd want to take somebody that they worry that Cleveland could take at the 14th pick. And Mark Williams, one of the risers on the board. This guy's a shot blocker, interior guy. He is somebody who can finish lobs, can handle a little bit, one or two dribbles out of the pick and roll to get to the basket, but he's not somebody who is going to run your offense from the perimeter. With that said, he is working on his three-point jumper. It's something that he's really been emphasizing in pre-draft workouts. It's one of the reasons why teams are increasingly high on him as a potential lottery guy. Never mind the baseline skills, rebounding, hustle, interior shot, the defense, interior finishing on offense. Mark Williams is going to be a good player in the NBA. It's just a matter of what level he reaches. And so back to 14 here. So we got the two Charlotte picks. With Cleveland, I noted earlier, how Colin Sexton has some interest around the league. Cleveland could lose him. They want to re-sign Ricky Rubio, who, of course, they traded last year. So they're clearly looking for guards. Maybe it's not Johnny Davis at 14, but I sure as hell think that that's the type of player they would want to target. Davis is a shot maker. He's a perfect fit next to Darius Garland because of the defense that he provides. So to me, when you're thinking about what Cleveland's going to be targeting here, somebody who can handle, because they need somebody else in the event that they lose Sexton, or in the event that they keep Sexton and trade him down the line. All right, next up, we got Tari Eason going to the Atlanta Hawks with the 16th pick. Eason is a hustler, dude. This guy plays so hard on the court. That's why I compare him to tall Jayshawn Tate. Rockets fans, anybody that's watched the Rockets knows how hard Tate plays. He's got measurables more like a Jeremy Grant or a James Johnson, though. And his style of play, I think with Trey, the appeal is the fact that Eason provides defense like a bunch of guys they've drafted in recent years, like Hunter and, of course, like Cam Reddish, who they moved. But he's also got a little bit of ability to pass and create for you. Again, he's not a primary guy. That's Trey's role. But in spurts where you want to push Trey off ball, have him come off some screens and handoffs, Eason is one of those guys that can bring the ball up for you or run a half-court set from the perimeter. So as long as he's cutting down on some, careless mistakes, some careless passes, I see him becoming kind of one of those connective pieces within your offensive system and one of your real stoppers on defense as well. All right, now we have Malachi Branham going to Ohio State. Rockets fans had mixed opinions on this pick when I tweeted it out. A lot of them preferred E.J. Liddell, Branham's teammate at Ohio State. But I like this pick because he fits a similar style that the Kevin Porter Jr. and Josh Christophers of the world have next to Jalen Green. And that's somebody who can help push Green off ball and really weaponize his ability as a catch and shoot player, a lob threat. And with Branham, granted, he's a score-first guy. He's not necessarily a primary playmaker. I think that balance can work out because Green can do both. Branham can handle, and I think there's untapped potential in the right situation where if you got Branham, Green, and Banchero, you have no choice but to conform and share the ball. And so I would like to see him in a context like that where he's asked to not just score, but to also be a creator for others. And then E.J. Liddell, got him going to the Bulls with the next pick. I know Bulls fans are all about this dude. Liddell, you gotta really respect somebody like E.J. Liddell. He enters the draft after his sophomore season, goes to the NBA draft combine, and he's told, guess what? You're not good enough. You need to be better as a perimeter defender. You got to be better as a shooter. And what does he do? He goes back to Ohio State for his junior year, improves on those two things, becomes a very good defender on the perimeter, so much quicker moving laterally, looks like somebody that can defend against some wings, some big jumbo-sized forwards. Liddell's got that versatility, and he had his best season shooting the ball. So now he's turned himself into this highly versatile, heavy, strong, versatile wing. And I think for Chicago, besides Patrick Williams, They don't have a guy like this. Makes a lot of sense for them at the 18th pick. All right, we got Ty Washington going to Minnesota. As I noted in here, the Wolves are having trade talks involving D'Angelo Russell. Whether they move him or not remains to be seen, but those are their intentions. So with the 19th pick, I have them taking Ty Washington, who's more of a pass-first player. I'd love to see that fit with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. With Cat, those two could develop great pick-and-roll chemistry. Two Kentucky guys as well, for what it's worth. I'd love to see how they develop chemistry. And then with Anthony Edwards, he'd have somebody setting him up for easy buckets. Washington's undersized. As I say here, he lacks explosiveness. But look, with him, he's a passer. He's heavy pick and roll. That's why you'd be drafting him. It's a system fit, and maybe he can flourish playing it next to the best talents he ever has in his life. Nikola Jovic, not Jokic. Have him going to the Spurs. Pretty much everything I said about Ousmane Dieng going to them at the 9th pick applies here. A big playmaking forward who can handle the ball. Sign me up on seeing him develop with the San Antonio Spurs. I want to see those guys on the same developmental plan that Keldon Johnson was on, that Devin Vassell is in. These guys starting out as 3-and-D types of guys and growing into more offensive hubs as they continue to get better, or at least to get more opportunity to do that. And with Jovic, he's not a defensive player yet, so he's a 3 minus the D, unlike Dieng, who does project as a better defender early on in his career. But with Jovic, it's not like with him, it's the type of thing where you can't see him being someone who can survive on defense. I think he can at least survive as long as he improves his intensity. You can make an argument that Jalen Williams would be the better pick for San Antonio at number 20 because that intensity isn't a question on defense. However, with Jovic, there's a bit more offensive upside considering his youth. For Denver, on the other hand, a team that's trying to win a championship right now, Jalen Williams went to Santa Clara. That's where Steve Nash went. That's where Kurt Rambis went as well. A number of former NBA players. And with Jalen Williams, he's kind of somebody who was second round during the college season, and then he becomes an early second round guy, and then approaching the draft lottery and the draft combine. I'm pretty sure Sam Vecini from The Athletic, as far as I know, is the only person who had him ranked in the first round. And around that time, I started hearing some whispers from contacts around the league like, hey, Jalen Williams, watch out for this dude rising into the mid-lottery or the early 20s. And that's exactly what happened. After his combine performance, it confirmed a lot of what people saw with him playing at a smaller school. And that's somebody who can create his own shot. He led the team in assists for 2 straight seasons, but he's not going to be a primary playmaker for your team in the NBA. If he gets drafted to Denver, that's Jokic. But he can then become somebody who sometimes runs your offense, who plays with synergy with Jokic. Remember that play with Jokic and Aaron Gordon passing the ball to each other? That's the type of stuff that you would envision with Jalen Williams. He's a versatile defender. He can hit spot up 3-pointers, and he can handle a little bit for you. High IQ guy who can defend. I think this dude can end up being one of the steals of the draft. Bryce McGowan's, he's got the ingredients for that too. I'm sure if you're Memphis, you're wishing you could get Jalen Williams here. Maybe they do on draft night, but not in this mock draft. McGowan's a lot of the same things I just said, just like in a raw package. He's not even 20 years old yet. He's got to learn how to become more of a passer. He's more of a score-first guy. And like I say in the notes here, the ideal ball handler is behind John Morant, someone with size who can also play next to him. Is that McGowan's? As is no. So why do I have him here? Because it's a long-term bet. You're picking somebody who is over 6'5", who can handle the ball for you, and maybe in a system like Memphis where there's accountability and there's an expectation of playing hard and playing defense, maybe in that situation he grows into the best version of himself. So this selection is almost kind of like the inverse. I hope McGowan's lands on a team like the Grizzlies rather than some teams where he's not going to get minutes or isn't going to get opportunity. I mean, like, they were starting Zaire Williams the whole year. They're willing to give rookies minutes and help them develop. So I'm into that pick. I've been told the Sixers are trying to move this pick. They want to package it with Danny Green to get a player who can help now. If they stay here, what does Daryl Morey usually do? He takes swings. Blake Wesley is one of the higher upside players remaining on the board right now. He's a little smaller for a guard or a wing, but this dude looks like a potential bucket getter. That's why I have the Tyler Hero, Jamal Crawford, Bones Highland comparisons there for them. But I'll tell you what, like, I expect Philly to do everything in their power to trade this pick. Got Walker Kessler out of Auburn, one of the best shot blockers in all college basketball, going to the Bucks here. This is a little bit of a strange pick because he isn't a proven shooter yet. He thinks he can shoot. There are certain teams that think he can become a reliable three-point shooter. I personally don't see it. So I have some mixed feelings about this pick for them, but undeniably he fits the mold of like the Brook Lopez types, where maybe he can become a shooter over the course of time, but from now he can provide shot blocking. The thing is, it's over the Bucks. Do you want to gamble on someone who doesn't have a reliable jumper yet when you could go with like a Christian Koloko, who I don't have in the first round in this mock, but could be somebody that makes some sense at this selection? The Jaden Hardy going to the Spurs, another upside player. Hardy was a top 5 prospect entering the college/G League season. Then he just stunk. He didn't, make significant progress like a Jalen Green did in the G League last year. He was a bit of a ball hog, wore some blinders, but I've seen enough in the sense that I think he wants to learn how to pass more. He's always been somebody who is asked to score. He's just never been asked to pass. Well, what does San Antonio require you to do? Hey, you got to pass the ball. You got to cut. You always got to be on. That's the Popovich Spurs system. So I think for him, again, another prospect team fit where I hope he lands on a situation like this to allow his best qualities as a score first player to develop, but also develop some better habits as a teammate that makes your guys around you better. So I hope Hardy lands on a team like the Spurs. Got Dalen Terry, another riser in the draft, versatile defender, can handle the ball, can pass a little bit for you. He's one of those like connective pieces that can work next to a ball dominant player like a Luka. So I'm into Terry going to Dallas as well. And for anybody that has old Jason Terry jerseys, that would make things a lot easier if you just change the number on the back. I have Kennedy Chandler going to the Miami Heat with the 27th pick here. Undersized guard, but they already have Kyle Lowry. Lowry's getting old. He fits the similar context of what you want in your backcourt alongside Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Maybe he grows into becoming a Lowry type of player for them and given their offense. All right, next up we get the Warriors. I have them taking Christian Koloko because James Wiseman's not even back yet. He's getting stem cell treatment on his knees and he's a kid and he hasn't played. Are you banking on him to ever be something? Well, why'd you draft him though? You drafted Wiseman for the idea of what he could become. A shot blocking, 3-point shooting 7-footer who could add a totally different vibe to your roster. Koloko is way older, still raw, still needs time to develop, but he has all of those same qualities. He's an at-rim finisher. He can potentially shoot. He has shown touch from the free throw line. He's shown touch from mid-range. I think there's potential there for him. As long as he's showing it in pre-draft workouts, that should increase some confidence for teams drafting in the late first round, early second round. And for the Warriors, again, like this guy is a shot blocker. He'd add that ingredient to your system. So I'm into the Koloko pick for them. Also for Milwaukee at 24, I like it too. Got Beauchamp out of the G League. He might not fall this far. He could end up in the high 20s or even the late teens because of, again, like this guy is smart, high IQ, hard worker, hustler on defense, willing to pass the ball. He cuts he has all of those qualities that fans love to watch from role players. It's just the shooting ability. That's the question with so many of these players is what level do they reach as a shooter? That's why I have him slipping a little bit here to the back of the first round. All right, last up, we get the Nuggets. They just traded for this pick on Monday from the Oklahoma City Thunder, giving up a future first round pick, and they moved off of JaMychal Green's salary. For Nuggets, I mean, this is about more than the pick. Now they have 21 and 30. They're positioned to move out of the draft with both of those picks. Up in the draft to get into the mid-first round. You can see them going a number of different ways, but with this selection, I think it makes sense to go with a prospect who plays without the ball, who can hit spot-up threes, who can cut to the rim, all the same stuff we talked about earlier with Denver. What do you want next to Jokic? You want smart, high IQ basketball players. So that's the first round mock draft right now. We'll be doing some more updates over the next week ahead of the draft. We got my big board. That'll be expanded with more profiles soon. We get the team needs page coming very, very soon. Maybe by the time you watch this video, that page will be up with needs for all 30 teams in the NBA. It's pretty much a big off-season preview. So I appreciate you watching this Ringer YouTube video. If you want to go check out the Ringer's 2022 NBA Draft Guide, you can find the link in the description below, or just head to nbadraft.theringer.com. Within the draft guide, we have some podcasts. So you have the Bill Simmons podcast here. We have some videos, some Jabari Smith analysis here. You may have found that on our YouTube page before. A bunch of goodies, articles. The draft guide's loaded with information, as my full scouting reports, a bunch of other stuff from our Ringer staff. Head over and check it out, and be sure to subscribe to the Ringer on YouTube. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a good one.